The reason why I write music and sing music is to connect with people. Music is the means to that end. For some folks, music is the end, and maybe they have to do other things to do that. But actually, for me, music is just the conduit. It's the vessel. It is the vibration that allows me to connect with other human beings that feel and perceive the world as I do, that want to connect with other, open-hearted and like-minded folks as well. So really, the music is just this fun thing that happens that allows me to do that.
Welcome to the podcast today. Our guest is Eli Lev, and he is a multi-talented marketer, musician, business owner. You've been doing this music thing for a long time, Eli, but I think one of the things that's most interesting to me is he loves spreadsheets. And I found like a fellow spreadsheet lover, and that is not your normal musician introduction that you've ever had for a concert or any other time, is it, Eli?
That's great. No, I should have them introduce me next time. And here he is, Eli Lev, lover of spreadsheets and singer-songwriter from Maryland. It's great.
But I love that. That's, you were telling me that just earlier, because I think that's one of the downfalls of many almost, I would say 80% of musicians, when you start talking business or organization or just even a spreadsheet, they just glaze over and they're checked out. And I think that's a problem that you've obviously figured out how to address. So maybe tell us your story, how you've gotten to where you are, and let's have some fun chatting.
Absolutely. Let's rock it. Thanks for having me on. I've been a huge fan of yours for a very long time, since we connected first at Modern Musician. So thank you for having me on the chat. Just a quick kind of rundown of who I am and where I come from. I'm from Maryland. I've been a career teacher my whole life. 6 years ago, I got my master's degree in English education and picked up an acoustic guitar instead. So I've been doing music full time for the last 6 years. I've traveled abroad and all over the USA, fans across different time zones all over the world. I've live streamed a lot, multiple streams on Spotify. So been building my own record label the last 6 years as an independent artist.
Nice.
And yeah, and what you were talking about, Jason, which is spreadsheets. I mean, really, spreadsheets is just the indicator of organization. I know folks who love paper, right? So I know folks who have like, the notebook still, who do like, the paper calendars. And if that works, great. What I have found is my go-to kind of place for organization is I use these two softwares kind of like together. One is Notion, which is kind of like a beefed up kind of spreadsheet app. And it's got interactivity to it. You can kind of customize your own pages. So it's just Notion, how you spell Notion. I've got my entire booking on there. I've got my media contacts on there. I've got my like daily vision magnet on there. And also Street Team, which is a CRM, which stands for Customer Relationship Manager for musicians. And I've been part of building Street Team with Modern Musician. And now I use it, and it is fantastic. So I'm a teacher, turned musician who loves to organize, essentially.
So did you pick up the guitar for the first time 6 years ago, or you'd been playing as a kid?
I have been writing ridiculous songs for my entire life, like just silly songs to entertain myself and a few friends. Nothing professionally by any means. I was in a cover band in a small country called Andorra in Europe for a few years. I was in like, a high school band where we just kind of messed around, but nothing serious until about 6 years ago.
Got it. And so you said you got your master's in English. So were you a teacher in the school system for several years then?
I was an 8th grade teacher on the Navajo Indian Reservation in northern Arizona for 3 years, right out of college. And then I taught in Israel for a little while and Andorra as well before coming back to the States to get my master's.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
And so you've upgraded to the high paid life of a musician from a teacher.
Yeah, actually, I'm making more as a musician than I am as a teacher, which is pretty amazing. When people hear you're like you're a musician, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, that's terrible. But it's like it's pretty awesome if I get to do what I love and organize it in a way that can keep me successful and keep me happy and, provide for me and my lifestyle.
When you talk about organization, so I know through Modern Musician, you've worked with probably several hundred people now, and coached them and done classes for them. What do you see as kind of that for the normal, we'll call it the normal musician? What's one of the biggest kind of Achilles heels or problems that they have, for making it to be successful financially, I guess, as a musician?
Yeah, it's Jason, maybe you know this, but it's just that mentality of understanding that their music is their business, not just a viral post, not a great song, not a big show. That whichever artist can understand that what they're doing is actually they're creating their own record label, they're creating their own business. Those are the artists that just crush it, because those are the artists that stay with it for a year, 5 years, 10 years. They understand that it's a business, and every business needs time to grow and to learn and to have failures and setbacks, but you're invested, with everything you've got. So any artist that I see that has the mentality of like, you know what, this is a business. If I have 50 fans, I'm going to send them emails and sell them things. Or if I have 100 fans, I'm going to live stream to them, you know what I mean? Once a week or once a month, so that we're, connected and they know my brand. Or if I have 1,000 fans, then you know what, I'm going to do a crowdfunding campaign. And I'm going to ask my top fans to stand up and see who wants to support me. And it just goes from there. So that's the thing that I've seen that makes, artists into musicians and entrepreneurs and successful musicians as well.
But, and I just think when I hear the word business, I mean, I just think if I were to rewind the clock back, I think, back as a teenager, when you think of a business, you think of, a Walmart, for example. You've got products on the shelf. And I think sometimes when I've talked to musicians, they almost, when you say, you got to make it your business, does that mean I got to just get products? I mean, go a little bit deeper on what you see as, when you say business, what all does that mean? And what's the process, I guess, that these people need to be thinking about?
I think that means that your fans in quotation marks are the most important thing out there. My fans aren't really fans. I call them levitators. My last name is Lev, levitation, cheesy. That's how I roll. But these are the most important people to me. And, those personal relationships need to be fostered and, connected to, and those are real people. And, you could consider them customers, but I think it's more than that. It's lifetime people who are going to connect with you and support you over a lifetime of music. So you can't really have those connections as deeply on social media. You can't really have those connections as deeply on stage. There has to be this kind of like back end where you're really kind of building that relationship with folks. And, I love that. I love connecting with people. I could see how some artists might shy away from that, where they're like, I just want to do music and that's it, but if you just want to do music and that's it, then great. You can do music and you can make songs, but that's probably about it. That's what's going to happen. So it's making that choice and making that commitment to the people who support you and fostering those relationships over time in an organized way with business in mind.
And I think it just kind of building on what you've said here is when you think about business and you're selling something. I grew up in the banking industry. That was my first, I'll call it the first half of the career. I spent 12 years there. And when I was in banking, the big thing was, what can you sell to people? It was this cross-sell. And it got so out of hand. I wasn't at Wells Fargo, but I know Wells Fargo actually got sued.
Oh yeah.
By millions and millions of dollars because they sold all kinds of things to people that they didn't need. And it got out of hand. And I think the word selling has it's almost like a 4-letter dirty word to a lot of people, and it turns them off. And I remember sitting in some trainings one time, and the guy got up and he says, your job is not to cross sell anybody. You're not selling anybody. Your job is to cross solve and help solve problems and also serve. And
awesome.
When that was told to me, I think all of a sudden I had this kind of epiphany that was like, whoa, if I'm serving someone and doing what's in their best interest and trying to help solve their problems, it's not selling. It's one of those where if your thing actually helps that person or solves that problem for them, morally, it would almost be a crime to not do that thing, and so if you didn't sell them that thing that's going to help them, it's like if you found a cure for cancer and you knew you had that cure,
Yeah,
it would be very wrong not to help serve those people and solve that problem,
I love that.
versus selling. And I think as a musician, and just in any business, even doesn't have to be just music, but if you can look at things in the way of, okay, if these are my people, like you
Hmm.
said, it's not your fans, they're individuals, people, and figure out what problem do they have.
Hmm.
They like me for whatever reason, if it's your music or your personality,
Yeah.
and what can you do to serve and solve more problems or fill needs they might have. It definitely changes that idea, I think.
I love that. And I kind of interpret that as almost like, for me, that means providing a service, right? So what service is my music providing? How can people listen to my music in their cars? I can provide CDs. How can people, feel good and connected even when the world is shut down? I can live stream and give them a sense of community. How can people get out, and explore, the regions around their hometown and new places that they haven't been? I can go tour and, play at some new venues or maybe their favorite venue. They can come see me there. How can they get a house show? You know what I mean? How can they experience their entire house like light up with just music and people? I can provide that service as well. So I love that process, and that's exactly it. You're essentially, how can you solve a problem? How can you provide a service? And then it's your job to figure that out and give people the option to take you up on that offer.
Yeah. I also, as I've run across several just kind of we'll call them just standard musicians, if they do perform somewhere, or maybe they've got a little gig, I would say most all the time, very few of them ever ask for a name or an email list, or they do their thing. And somehow I guess they think that they might have a whole bunch of people come up and say, please email me, or please follow up with me. And I don't think that's the case. What's been your experience, I guess? I mean, when you started doing the music as a career, did you just immediately think, I got to collect names and a list and I need to serve these people? Or did you?
I think I fell on that really early. I think it was like a happy accident. So before I released my first album, I kind of made a challenge to myself that I was going to get 50 people to support me on Patreon before I released any music. So I needed at least 50 people to support me on Patreon to know that I should be doing music, and then I could release my first album. I did the same for my second album, and my goal was 75. I got it, released my second album. Then my third album was 100, and so on. So I built my community from the inside out, not on social media, but from actual relationships with people, and providing the service of, Patreon, which is essentially, monthly videos, extra Zoom calls, that personalized approach, and to know that people really did want to hear my music. Because if they didn't, then that's okay. Then I wouldn't do the whole thing. That's right. Turns out they did, which is fantastic. So yeah, and to your point on tour with the live shows, so this last tour, I had a pretty much a huge epiphany, which was more important than how much a venue pays me, more important than my performance, more important than what I'm wearing, more important than my set list, is the relationships that I can make at that show with actual people. That's beforehand, that's during, and that's after. So let's say I walk into a show, there's three other bands, and I'm like, crush it. I just go out there and absolutely slay. I put on my sunglasses and I'm just like, see y'all, I have to go to St. Louis. Nothing would happen, right? Nothing at all. Let's say I got on that stage. I had a decent performance. You know what I mean? It was mediocre. It was okay. People liked it, but I stayed for every other band's performance. I gave tons of love, and I had conversations with everybody in that room and got people to sign up to my email list and texting. That show to me would be much more successful than the other model. So that was a huge epiphany for me. Is just it's about the relationships that you can create with people at that space in a live event.
Absolutely. I had a chance to sit down with Rick Barker last fall for a couple hours, and he was sharing
Awesome.
stories about Taylor Swift and how she was, getting started, and she would sit after everybody else had finished performing, and she was interacting, signing CDs,
Yep.
and she would outsell, these big name artists, country artists that she was touring with, all over the place. And it was, I think sticking out and just trying to make those relationships pays off, whether
Yep.
you're Taylor Swift or anybody else that's there too.
Absolutely. I learned that from Michael Walker, who was on your podcast, who spent, 2 or 3 years of his life just like staying up until 4 a.m. messaging people on MySpace
Nice.
and going out to the lines, to his shows to talk to people who are lining up for the show they were about to do. So it's that extra mile. It's like, hey, I'm here. I also care, and I want to, connect with you as a person. That's going to really kind of set the foundation.
So thinking about these systems a little bit, I think you get musicians that go out and you're interacting, and that's great. And I think the next place I see people fail is maybe what's the follow-up process. And
Right.
as I look back, I used to coach a lot of mortgage loan officers in my previous life. And one of the things that they always were hoping that there'd be some software that would come around and magically make them more successful as a salesperson. And it was very interesting in watching people who were supposed to be salespeople completely fail. And they would put all of their process. They'd say, okay, well, when I have this software, it will solve all my problems and it'll do everything for me. And I watched that fail over 6 times with different softwares. And these were good salespeople, but even though they had this gift given to them of a software that could send emails or, keep track of the process, they couldn't use it. And what I learned, what was really interesting is the softwares can do all kinds of things, but if that person who's actually trying to sell can't even just handle taking a piece of paper and maybe there's 4 things that need to happen. You're going to send a birthday card. You're going to make a phone call on this date. If they can't even handle doing those things, no software is going to solve that problem. I don't know whether you've seen that with musicians where all of a sudden they think some magic software is going to solve everything for them and make them successful.
I've seen this over and over again where we'll share how to get new fans, right? And they're musicians just obsessed with just, I would need an email address. It's like, get me email addresses, like get me, like lead gens, like I need people to use my sign up form. And then they're like, but I'm not making money. And it's like, have you offered anything to these people that you've just spent all this money, getting? It's like, oh, I sent like maybe like a newsletter like 2 months ago. It's like, yo, that's not going to cut it. You know what I mean? Like, we need to send a text every week just saying like, hey, how's it going? Here's a video. Happy summer, like whatever you want to do. Like there has to be a text once every 2 weeks at least. For your emails, the newsletter is gone. There's no newsletters anymore. It's now you're having conversations with people one-on-one. It's not like, all these kind of like colors and photos. It's like, hey, this is Eli. How are you doing? What are you listening to lately? That's it. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a sell every time, but you send 1, 2, or 3 of those emails, then that 4th email, and you let them know that you have a new t-shirt and that you let them know that there's a live stream that you're doing, that they can come and get a special deal on that t-shirt. Now you're onto something. You remind them again, an hour before through text, hey, this live stream's happening now. You send them a follow-up email that they can do after if they missed it. Now you're turning those folks into, a steady revenue stream, and you're able to sustain yourself as a musician. So you could spend $1,000 getting, names and emails and whatever, but that doesn't translate to anything if you're not doing exactly what you're saying, which is fostering those relationships and making offers.
Right. Well, I know with a lot of these systems, they call it kind of that nurturing the lead or nurturing your fan or your client. And I think one of the things for me as a musician that I still struggle with, because I think, oh, people aren't going to be interested in that. But what I've learned over time is if I'm in the middle of writing a song or writing, working on a book or an album, if I'll share some of the process with those fans, they love that. And it takes nothing. And what I've realized is you kind of bring them into that so they feel part of the journey. And all of a sudden, when you finally get around to having something they actually can buy, now they actually care about the thing.
Right.
And they'll support you in that. And because they're vested and they feel, they were there on the journey. But I've been guilty myself. I've released an album and didn't tell anybody I was doing. I mean, I worked my guts out. I mean, I can't tell you how many times down to the studio, and then it's all of a sudden, hey, I got an album.
Yeah, here it is.
Excited as I am, and then just nothing, and essentially, I kind of ignored those people, whereas I could have had, videos, I could have had email, pictures, or, show a little snippet of, 30 seconds. Hey, check this out. I just got this back from my audio engineer. What do you think? they love that. And I think the hard part though is, if I'm a musician, how do you find, or how do you realize what people will be interested in and not feel guilty or feel that imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And, that's something that I've learned as well, is that, people these days, they like to process even more than the final product. A lot of these viral videos are of people showing how something is made, essentially, and watching it come together or go apart in front of your eyes. And I don't think there's anything that you shouldn't share these days, which is interesting. Like, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever people are comfortable with, like, go for it. Like, if you feel comfortable sharing a moment on stage where you totally messed up the chord, do you know what I mean? Like, you would get more likes and more comments and more engagement on that post than you would on the post where it's like, hey, there's a new song out today.
Yeah.
You just would, because it's human, it's relatable, it kind of shows you who you are, and allows you to kind of just be, fallible. None of us are infallible. We're all human. And if we can share that, that makes other people feel good about their,
Right.
human nature as well.
I've found the same thing. If you share your blemishes or your weaknesses, well, I just had Saturday night, I did a concert here at my studio, and we had dinner, and there was several new people that I actually didn't know, and they'd come. But I had one of my fans who asked me if I'd play. So I wrote a song that sounds like Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, but I did a twist on it and said, okay, what would the soundtrack be like if I was doing a movie where they were showing Beethoven when he lost his hearing? And it's kind of cool, but the song is hard, and I just barely finished it, and I cannot play it well at all. And this person said, well, oh, I really love that, but I can only get through the first page. It'd be so cool if you could play this. And we're talking like multiple sharps, and then it switches to flats. I mean, it's brutal. My wife still was giving me a hard time about it even yesterday, but so I told everybody, I said, hey, this is going to be a complete train wreck, and I'm going to blame it on her. And it really, still, it wasn't good. It really wasn't.
Yeah.
But I did it. And what was funny is I've done several of these dinner concerts, and I got an email that night, and the guy went from a guy that I just barely met. And he said, I started playing piano a couple of years ago. And he said it was so refreshing to see that even people that are as good as you can just be real. He goes, it gave me hope that I can do it too. And it's still, even, it makes me feel uncomfortable. Oh my gosh, I'll never do that again. But that, I got more reaction from it than anything else I did when I sounded good.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I love that. I do the similar thing on my shows where I'm just like, request anything, I'll do my best. And Jason, some of these like versions that I'm doing of songs that I've maybe heard once or twice are just like disasters. But them seeing me try my best, you know what I mean, to play the song that they want, more engaged, and people more like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Than if I played a song that I've played 100 times perfectly. People are like, okay, yeah, of course you did,
Yep.
So that's same kind of phenomenon. And that's leaning into that and just being and owning it can be really cool, showing that we're all human.
But I think being, just thinking that you got to be in that perfect social media, polished, you see these people doing the selfies and they got to look perfect. I think as a musician, the more you can realize, hey, show the imperfections. It's going to get 10 times the views and love than if you're just perfect all the time, for sure.
Yep.
Okay, so we were talking a little bit about CRM systems and kind of a follow-up system with these mortgage officers. So I started out in my career in the business side when just the internet was coming online and we were just building websites. And it was interesting, all of these problems like sending emails or sending text messages, or, but gosh, we sent faxes out and sent, snail mail even back in the day. All of these systems kind of started having their own software. So you had the MailChimps, and there's 100 other email senders, and as well as every other system. And I think you still see that today. But one of the things that I think has really happened over just the last couple of years is there's been some systems that have combined, something that does what 15 softwares could have done. And there's multiple companies. Salesforce is probably the biggest one out there that did that, but I call them a Frankenstein. They're so big that, and you can't really, I've used them
Mm.
multiple times and consulted on them. That's not a great solution for a musician at all. But talk about maybe some of the processes that some of these tools, I mean, you guys have your system that you're using. I know with Modern Musician, the street team, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But talk about some of the processes that people would want to solve with some of these softwares.
Yeah. So I started working with Modern Musician probably about 4 years ago. So I was there in the days where they were piecing together, ManyChat, Zapier, I think it was Active Campaign,
Yep.
and it was, Patreon, and it was, ClickFunnels, and just like, all these kind of, services. So I was there during those days, and it was nuts, like trying to connect everything, and
Yep.
one thing would fall apart, then everything would fall apart. So now I am only using one software, and this is the Street Team software that Modern Musician has been developing over the last, I would say, 2 years. What I do is it has it has a conversations tab. In that conversations tab, I can see every email, every text, every Instagram comment, every Facebook comment, every TikTok comment, every Twitter comment as well. It's all integrated into one kind of dashboard. And it's my go-to. It's on my phone. So when I have like a QR code at live shows and people can like send requests, their text literally comes to my phone, and I can see it right there when I'm playing, and I can just play it instantaneously. So I can send all my emails from there. I send all my texts from there. I schedule all my social media posts from there. It's pretty incredible. I sell through there. I set up my website through there, and it's all in one thing. So instead of using 6 different softwares like we did back in the day, just one easy to use CRM, and it's made specifically for musicians, which is pretty rad. So that's all I use now, Jason. That's it.
That's awesome. Well, and I think that's the dream. I think one thing that I've learned in doing a lot of CRM consulting over the years is there's not a single software out there that's going to do everything perfectly. But what I have realized is all of these different softwares are evolving. And so even though you might see some really shiny, cool, shiny object, AI is the big thing right now, and so if you're just a little bit patient and can wait the 6 or 12 months rather than paying thousands of dollars for it, these other
Right.
softwares typically will follow in step and have something
Yes.
that's sometimes even better than what the original thing was.
Yep.
So it's really important, I think, to not, chase the shiny objects. I watched in the corporate world, in the banking system, man, we would chase shiny objects way too often and they'd spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on shiny objects that would be
Yeah.
obsolete 2 years later. So,
Right. And I think the interesting thing behind all that is what we were talking about earlier, is just the relationships. So the relationships and fostering that doesn't change. It's just like the systems around it that might adapt a little bit. But if you're sticking true, you know what I mean, through, communicating somehow through these folks and letting them know what's going on, they don't know the behind the scenes stuff. They don't see all the, the gears and levers. So it almost doesn't matter. As long as you're having the relationships, great. But if you can find something or one thing that consistently allows you to do that, for me, it's, street team, then fantastic. That's what you want to
yeah.
go for.
I think one of the things that I've seen, not very many businesses or especially musicians do this very well, but I know Russell Brunson talks about a value ladder, and I don't know whether you've got a value ladder built into your
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of process with your fans. If so, tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, I live, eat, breathe, sleep value ladders. That's what I do. It's one of the most interesting. It's kind of like really just meeting somebody. I mean, you're not going to go up to somebody and be like, "Hey, let's get married." You know what I mean? Oh, by the way, sorry, my name's, Eli. It's like, "Hi, what's your name?" You know what I mean? Like, where are you from? You know what I mean? Hey, this was fun. Do you want to meet again, in 2 weeks or something? Or, "Hey, I got the show. Let's do something fun together." It really is, the value ladder is just a way of describing in business terms what a human relationship would be over a long period of time. So, first you get to know somebody, then you say, "Hey, do you want to hang out a little bit more?" Then maybe they're going to buy you lunch. Maybe you'll buy them lunch. Then you go on a trip together, and then, you're besties and you do like all the stuff together. So that's essentially the breakdown of the value ladder, on psychological human terms. But on the musician and business side, yes, there's each rung is very specific.
And I think a lot of times that's hard for people to kind of visualize what that might look like. I mean, I kind of visualize if they're at a show and you've got a QR code, if they hold their phone up and you can get them to do the QR code to get something, they put in their name and now you've got their number now because you can now
Right.
text follow up. And
Right.
my guess is if I was in your value ladder, you'd probably have some automation that would just say, "Hey, I hope you like the show. What do you like best about it?" And I could text back
Right.
and it would feel personal. It's not just a click yes or no,
Right.
really robot style relationship, right?
Yeah. So let's bring it to a metaphor that all musicians can understand, a live show, right? Let's say that, you'd say the bottom rung on the value ladder is if you are playing an outdoor show, you know what I mean? Just in your town kind of thing. You're like you set up an outdoor show and somebody is walking by, like 4 blocks away and they just hear you in their periphery. That would be like the beginning of the relationship. Online, that could be, they saw your video or they liked something or they just were exposed to your music. Then they're like, "Ooh, I feel the vibration. You know what I mean? Let me get closer," kind of thing. So then they go into the space and now they're actually in the yard, kind of thing. So they're experiencing the show. Maybe they're following you on social media. Maybe they signed up for your texting list. But the closer you get to stage, the closer they are to you, as a, as a fan, as a customer, as a community member. They go higher up on the ladder essentially. So if somebody's in the front row, they're riding the rails, you know what I mean? They're commenting on all your stuff. They're replying to all your emails, they've got your shirt on kind of thing. But then there's the backstage. So those folks I kind of consider my inner circle. Those are the folks that are coming backstage. They're seeing me before the show for meet and greets, after the show. Maybe they're on the sidelines watching it, you know what I mean, from a special place. But even after that, Jason, those are the folks that get on the tour bus, right? Those are like the elite, top of the value ladder. They're riding along with you. They get to hang out and see what's going on, and they come to the studio with you. So all of that relationship from somebody who has no idea who you are to they have heard your music, to they like your music, to they're buying your merch, to they're part of your inner circle and supporting you on a monthly basis, to they're buying, like the top high ticket items, like, maybe an original song or, a house show. That is the value ladder. And, putting steps in place that allows people to get closer to you as an artist is a very important thing. As you've got your 2 Comma Club, man. This very well. So yeah, it's all that process, and it's really fun. It's really fun watching that happen in real time.
So as you're describing all of this stuff, now as a musician, I'm hearing this and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I got to organize and plan all this. But wait a minute, I got to have a website and I got to figure out somebody who's going to program
Yeah.
this stupid software now that I don't know how to use. That's apparently going to change my life. And I've got to have design stuff. And oh, wait a minute, I got to do music videos. How in the world does a musician find time to even write music or even sit down with the guitar or piano if they got to deal with all this other stuff? It takes the joy out of it, doesn't it?
Well, to me, the reason why I write music and sing music is to connect with people. Music is the means to that end. For some folks, music is the end, and maybe they have to do other things to do that. But actually, for me, music is just the conduit. It's the vessel. It is the vibration that allows me to connect with other human beings that feel and perceive the world as I do, that want to connect with other, open-hearted and like-minded folks as well. So really, the music is just this fun thing that happens that allows me to do that. So thinking about it that way, everything that I do in music gets me there, and everything that I do behind the scenes gets me there. And writing songs is just another part of that. So all these pieces in place is essentially the whole, which is experiencing joy with others through music.
Yeah. And you talked earlier about building a record label, and so building a record label by yourself, there's a reason record labels had lots of employees.
Yeah,
So
I can see that now.
how in
Yeah,
the world do
now.
you build a record label today? I mean, what
Yeah.
you found that works for you? I mean, are you going out and find, you got lucky and sat across the bar from a really smart web developer and a programmer and a, designer, where do you go if you're looking for somebody like that?
Well, I think a good kind of way of knowing if you're ready to bring somebody on your team is if you've done it, You know how to do it, and now you don't have enough time to do it anymore. Or there's higher level things that only you can do, but other people could do what you did, essentially. So the first person that I brought on my team, like, I made my first website on Bandzoogle, right? Of course you can. It's so easy. It's so great. You know what I mean? You go in there, you put some things on, and you got a website. But then I realized that I needed more things on my website than I could do, and it was out of my skill level. I didn't have time to learn how to do web design. So, I found this incredible web designer. His name is Ross, Electric Kiwi from the UK. And he's been my go-to guy for the last 6 years. So if I need something new in my store, he does it. If I have like a whole new design, he does it. And that's outsourced. So he is my website guy. And that's, I started building my record label through that first. Same thing happened with booking. Jason, I booked all my shows the first 4 years as a musician. I booked my first cross-country tour. I understood what it took to send out the emails, do the research on Google, do the follow-ups, like plot out the points. Got to a point where I couldn't keep doing that and keep tracking everything. So I found somebody to help me with that. They are overseas, way out in Indonesia, but they helped me with booking. So whatever it is, that next task that you're like, you know what, I could probably show somebody how to do this. And it's just that time, money equation, right? So I'm gonna spend a little bit more money here, but I'm gonna get this much time that I can spend on higher level things. So my best and easiest advice is figure out how to do it yourself first, and whenever you hit your limit, just get somebody else to.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. You hear a lot about people hiring VAs, and it's amazing what the overseas market has done. I've used onlinejobs.ph. It's a phenomenal site if you're looking for somebody in the Philippines. We've used Fiverr. I know we've done it's been probably 5 years now. We've got a guy in Serbia that does music videos for us. He's incredible.
Nice.
Vlad is his name. He's great.
Shout out to Vlad in Serbia.
But it's interesting if you're trying to just hire something because you're being lazy. I love that you're saying you need to learn how to do it first, because I think a lot of people will it's almost a little bit of a cop out. They're like, oh, I'm just going to hire somebody to do it. And what I've learned in doing multiple businesses is nobody's going to care about your business or your music or your thing as much as you will. And if you don't care enough about it to figure something out, then, don't be frustrated when somebody else doesn't care about it either. Because if you didn't care, then why should they?
And that's a skill, Jason, that you've learned over time, is learning how to do something and then training somebody how to do it. That's like a required skill in order to scale a business. You cannot scale, if you're not able to do that. So a good example of this is me, finding media contacts, right? So it's taken me, I'm not even kidding, like 6 months to train somebody to do what I learned how to do. And it's building, standard operating procedures for every single step along the way, making sure that every single one has been, done accordingly, editing, proofing, making sure it's good. And then only then, after I've seen it done like 5, 6, 10 times and like to perfection, can I be like, okay, let's go to the next task. But I've had to learn how to do each of those. And then only then could I tell someone, show someone how to do that. So it takes time. But it's worth it in the end, because now I can focus on higher level things that no one else can do, except myself, my business.
For sure. And I think one of the hardest things is when you do hire that person to come on, is being patient with them and not expecting them to know everything and just somehow be a mind reader, especially mind reader from, halfway around the globe, And I see sometimes, and I think the key is definitely being able to just evaluate, did I teach them well? Right. And if I didn't, if I felt like that person was capable and smart and cared, then, you owe it to yourself to learn how to become a good teacher as well.
Yep, absolutely. That's it.
I think that's what's been really hard. That's been a hard thing to learn. What's really fun is once you get to the point where now they're doing things better than you.
Yes.
And they pass you and you're like,
they are.
I don't even know how to do this anymore.
Right. Tell me what you're doing. Yeah, exactly.
But I definitely, I think that's when if you've scaled enough, that's when you hopefully are hiring a manager or somebody that can know how to do the thing and still ensure that it's, at least know that they've got your back and are going to help. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, gosh, from a street, you talk about the software. Any other thoughts on CRM systems or
Yeah, they're
musicians not
constantly
taking that
evolving.
plunge?
No, yeah, they're constantly evolving. And, I'm learning every week, every month. Like it used to be like the whole industry changed every, 10 years. Now, then it was every 5 years. And it was like, now it seems like every 6 months. I mean? There's something that comes out that just puts everything on its head. Like 6 months ago, we wouldn't necessarily be talking about AI as much as we are right now.
Right.
But, that's great. And, as you're saying, shiny object syndrome is a thing. So very early on, I realized, okay, I'm one musician. I can't get all my music synced and perform live and live stream on Twitch and go viral on TikTok and be a YouTube star and build my own website. You know what I mean? It's just like there's only so many things out there. So we
And
were talking
find
about,
time to write music. That's the thing
oh yeah,
I
wait,
struggle with.
music,
Wait a minute, I got to do music.
songs, and record it and release it. Yeah, exactly. So you can't do it all. And just, for me, finding exactly what my thing was and just leaning into it was really important. So for me, it was really just like free live streams on, Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And that's been kind of like my pulse. I do these folk Fridays every Friday. I've been doing them for 4 years since the pandemic. And that is the pulse where I connect with my community. I ask them how they're doing. They see how I'm doing. We share songs. It makes everything easier because everything can be built into that. So if I have a release, I can talk about it. If I have a new t-shirt, I can talk about it. If I'm going on tour, I can talk about it on Folk Friday. So that's like kind of like the place where I'm able to foster those relationships and let people know what's going on. So for some people, that's TikTok. For some people, it's Twitch. Whatever that community is, like just pick one. You know what I mean? Maybe it's Reddit. Like all good. Whatever works for you. Just like find your people, really lean into it, and spend the time to build and foster that relationship. And as you're saying, bring them up that value ladder. Bring them closer and closer to the stage, and then hopefully they get on that bus and ride with you until the end.
Well, and I think the big thing is, before you dive into that fancy, shiny CRM software system that does everything, if you can't handle doing it on a piece of paper or in a very basic spreadsheet, if you don't know what it is you want to do first,
Right.
the software is not going to be able to magically tell you what to do. And, so I think the key is
so smart.
just
Yes.
set the goal of saying, I'm going to build a list of people. Well, find those 50 people, do it on a spreadsheet, do it on a,
Right.
maybe it's a paper sign-up sheet you pass around.
That's what I
Yeah.
did.
If you can't handle it on that, putting a QR code and having a system's not going to solve that problem for you.
Yeah, it's like someone is just like gave you this like incredible samurai sword from like the 14th century. It's like, here's a samurai sword. And you're like, whoa, I'm gonna put it on my wall. You know what I mean? But like, learning how to use it and like wield it and like all those skills, like that takes time. So absolutely, that's a huge insight, Jason.
Yeah. So I just hope for most musicians out there, I mean, it's great to dive in and commit, and you definitely need to do that. But having a clear path of where you're going to go and then committing to it is, it will save you a lot of money and frustration and, help you be successful if you'll take it step by step and think of it like that ladder. You're just value ladder. You're going a little rung at a time.
And and mentors as well. I mean, Jason, I remember coming up in the whole online musician world, and you were a huge inspiration to me. You were the first kind of like, however many figure musician that came in and out of modern musician. And it was just like, I didn't fathom it. I didn't even think that was possible. You know what I mean? But, connecting with, people who've done it and like, you've seen it happen. It's like, that's been huge. So, connecting with Michael Walker and seeing you do it has been like, okay, maybe I can do that. And then learning from the best has been a huge help for me as well.
Absolutely. I remember when I kind of started my journey. I mean, I've been a marketing guy for over 20 years, but when I kind of committed into doing the music, my mental place I was at was there's no way to, I'll be a poor musician and I'll find something else that I can make money with. But I remember going through, it was called the One Funnel Away Challenge that ClickFunnels Russell Brunson did. And it was like $100. And so I thought, I got nothing to lose. $100. And somebody at a conference had told me I should do this. And And it was one of the few things you come back from a conference and I actually did, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going through the first week, and it was all of this rah rah, believe in yourself, you can do it. And to the point where I'm like, okay, can I put it like 3x speed? Because like, I want to go barf. Like, you can do this. I know I can do it. Like, tell me how I can do it now. And I still remember it was over a week of just believe in yourself. And I even had
Wow.
Steven Larson's on there, like yelling at you to tell you to believe. I
Yeah.
mean, and I got to about the second week, and then I got into the third week, and all of a sudden it was starting to do this stuff, and it got hard.
Mm-hmm.
And as I looked back, especially once I got a year or two down the road, when I could look back and be like, okay, what really made the difference? And the fact that I believed that I could, and I'd look at it like, oh yeah, well, if he can do it, then I can do it.
Right.
Or if the Michael Walker, if so and so can do it, then why
Yeah.
can't I do it? There's no reason no.
Yep.
And I think it's interesting to look at what ClickFunnels has done with their 2 Comma Club awards. For those that aren't familiar with it, it's they teach you to build a funnel, and they tell you to focus on one funnel and get it so it does $1 million of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems like this impossible thing. And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
they've just stayed with it. And I was like, oh, there's 200 people that did this. Whoa, wait. And then the next year you go back and they're giving out 600 awards. 600
More.
people did this. What?
Yeah.
They did it with what? There's people that have done $1 million funnels with teaching people to rope cowboy, cows.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you've seen that one. I thought, oh my gosh, like online, I'm going to teach somebody how to rope a cow. I
Yeah.
think you'd have to do that in person. And just the funny things that people can be successful with. And if they can do it, then why couldn't I do it with sheet music?
Yeah.
And so I turned around, and I guess if you think about like the 5-minute mile, 4-minute mile, all these different things, when somebody broke that barrier,
Right.
now it was like, whoa, somebody can do that. Well, I can do it too, with a competitive nature. And he's like, oh, let's do it. Let's figure it out. And I think for musicians, that's a key thing, is just believing that it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be like me, where I'm like, this is no fun, get to the meat. That's actually matters more than even the tactical doing all the stuff, because when it gets hard, you're going to want to quit. And if you quit believing in yourself, you won't keep going.
Yep. It's the mindset part. And that's the seed, and having that like very strong, mindset and seed, like, yes, I can do this. And everything else is just one other challenge that you're going to figure out. That's awesome.
Yeah, and you speak about mentors, and I'll just put a plug in for, they call them mastermind groups, or at least just you talk about finding your people that are going to support you. But a lot of times being around other people that have that same mindset or in a similar thing. So I know Modern Musician does their mastermind group, and it's a lot of musicians, and they just get, yes, you're getting together and making relationships and making friends. But I think part of it is just rubbing off on each other and realizing, well, if Eli did this, then maybe I can do it. Or Michael did this, I should be able to do this too. And don't underestimate the power of getting a group of a dozen or so people together, and definitely go have fun and play hard. But it's amazing the connections and the introductions and kind of doors that open when you step up and spend, whether it's $1,000 or $10,000, or let's call it $50,000. I know some of these masterminds, it's worth it just for those relationships that may lead you to a door that, for all you knew, was going to be the $1 million funnel. So,
yep. Super powerful. Absolutely. Just getting in a space with others like you that have done it. And then like, oh, wow, there's like a lot of synergy there, and pretty incredible stuff. So you know that well. You were the first Modern Musician mastermind, actually.
Platinum. We were the master down in Costa Rica. It was a blast.
It's awesome.
We nearly drowned a person or two, but we had a blast doing it, right?
Everybody survived. Thank goodness.
Well, so anyway, there's a plug for those masterminds, and it's, I think the key thing with those is try to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. Whether it's people that you hire or people that you're going to hang out with, because you typically are going to be very similar to the 6 or 8 people that you spend the most time with. So surround yourself with people that are going to lift you up and believe in you for sure.
Absolutely. If you're the smartest person in the room, get out of there.
Right. So Eli, let's we're about out of time, but I want, what is your definition of, the podcast is called Successful Musicians Podcast.
Yeah.
What in your mind, what's the definition of somebody being successful as a musician?
Yeah, with all this talk of like, business and marketing, and, making it and all that, good stuff and organization. Honestly, to me, it really boils down to if you're happy with what you're doing. So, you know, I am a success right now because I'm happy with what I'm doing. I was a success 2 years ago, because I love singing. I love writing songs, love connecting with people. And if there is a happiness and a joyfulness in the process, then that is just constant success. There is no time, no matter what, every failure is just, in quotes, is just a part of the process. So it can't be wrong. Really kind of owning that and understanding and just realizing that it's a long-term thing. Being a success is just, it's so grand now that you might as well start enjoying every moment, because you're going to be waiting 20 years if you think one thing is a symbol of success. So that's my just very succinct answer, is just finding joy in the process along the way.
And then you talked about 20 years. And I think the key is if you're having that happiness and enjoying what you're doing, you look back 20 years backwards and that's probably about the time you may find whatever the success that maybe everybody else thought was in their mind what success was, but you figured it out being happy all the way along. That's great.
Yep.
Great definition. Awesome. Well, last question for you. What's the best advice you've ever been given about being a musician?
Best advice that I've ever been given about being a musician. I don't know where I heard this, but I can't remember if it was one of those like just like Spotify things that came up and it's like, oh, here's somebody who's going to tell you about something. I can't remember. But I think it was just don't stop. Like just keep going. You know what I mean? Like I've had like, terrible shows. You know what I mean? 5 people have come to shows. 0 people have come to shows. You know what I mean? I've played to bartender and a sound guy and their dog before. But I've also played to, 500 people, like, at this amazing, venue in DC. And, I've heard people say my music is great. And I've been on a doorway when someone's walking out of a show and said that I was like crap. Like they liked all the other artists except me. You know what I mean? And it's like, I wear that with the badge of honor, because like I didn't just stop. You know what I mean? It's not like one day I'm just gonna be like, oh, I'm done. I will be done maybe one day, but when that happens, it's like, okay, that's great. So I would just say, don't stop, keep going, as long as you're finding joy and happiness in what you're doing.
That sounds like some lyrics to a very successful song you may have to go right now.
Don't stop, keep going, keep finding success and happiness with what you're doing.
So, Eli, thank you. This has been fun. I think you've had a lot of good insights that I think musicians need to hear, and it wasn't the typical interview, which I've loved. You've been my spreadsheet buddy, right?
Yeah, we're spreadsheet buddies, ride or die now, Jason.
But
Awesome.
if all whoever's listening to this, whatever you take away, that organization and really kind of believing in the business, just you owe it to yourself to learn the business, and you owe it to your fans. If you feel like you got something that's worth sharing, please share it. And hopefully this podcast is something that people, if you feel like it was worth your time and I think it'd help somebody, please share it, pass it along. And Eli, we got to do this again. I think we've got all kinds of other directions we can go that would be really helpful for musicians down the road. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. You're an inspiration to me, and I'm incredibly honored that you asked me on. And I've had an absolute blast. Appreciate you.
Awesome. If anybody wants to go check out Eli, where should they go listen to your music or learn more about what you're doing?
Yes, I am on your local Google machine. Type in Eli, E-L-I, and my last name is Lev, L-E-V, as in victory. You found me online, all streaming platforms, and I have a community called the Levitators. So if you want to see all the gears in action and what happens, this is what I do, and how I learned from other musicians. Join the Levitators, go to my website, see what happens, and you can use it and take it and, make it your template for your own community.
Awesome. Thanks, Eli. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Jason.